you have a recipe?
I've been around for a number of years, officer, and frankly, I just can't, in all good conscience, consent to permitting you to search my car. So just take it on note that I'm refusing and not giving my consent to search my car.
That's all you have to say. You don't have to get all in their face.
Oh, no. No. Manners.
Right.
Manners.
Right. So you can just calmly and confidently assert your rights right there.
And you could also say, my attorney's Dale Carson. He has told me on more than one occasion never to permit law enforcement to search my car, and I would defer to him in this circumstance. So if you'd like to call him, please feel free.
You also talk about in your book, Arrest Proof Yourself, you talk about carrying a card that I think is a really brilliant idea. And the card has the name of your attorney. It has the name of maybe someone you know in law enforcement. It has some statements on it. Do you think, does this card really work if you present it to, let's say, a state trooper who just pulled you over?
Well, Ed Ball, who was a guy who owned DuPont Corporation for many years, used to say, confusion to the enemy. And certainly if you present a document to law enforcement that is bona fide, it has stapled to it a business card from an attorney, a business card from a local police officer or sheriff's officer, all those things tell the officer that you are legitimate, that you're not a reason for concern for people or property in the area, in addition to which it's confusing. The officer's never gotten anything like that before.
Yeah.
Certainly they're going to look at it and say, well, yeah, wait a minute. This guy goes to the same church my brother does. I'll call my brother. Maybe he's not such a bad guy. And in that way, you avoid being arrested. And that's the key. If you can complete a police-citizen encounter and walk away a free man or woman, you have won. Believe me, you've won.
And let's get to this point too. The police officer there on the scene in a traffic stop situation, they have a tremendous amount of discretion to decide what they wish to do with you. For example, even if you are committing some kind of a minor offense, they don't necessarily have to arrest you. Can't they also just give you a notice to appear in a court and not arrest you?
They can ignore it entirely. They could just say, don't do that anymore. How could you have been so dumb? And you just, the response from the citizen should be, your officer, you're 100% correct. And I do apologize for my stupid behavior. It won't happen again. That's more likely to get you let off with nothing than getting in his face and saying, there are real criminals around here, and it makes sense to me, since I am paying your salary, that you should go arrest some of those folks.
Right. Don't get smart mouth with them. There are times to be polite. Let me give out your website, dalecarsonlaw.com. Did I get that right?
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
dalecarsonlaw.com, and the book is Arrest Proof Yourself, which is a good read. I actually read this when someone that I know in the natural health industry got arrested for marijuana possession, and they were in the process of being licensed as a medical marijuana provider, but hadn't completed that. And yet they were carrying marijuana in their vehicle. They got arrested, and it really got me thinking about, wow, how does this whole system work? But let me ask you this, Dale. Many of us who are law-abiding citizens, such as myself, I've never been arrested. I've never committed any felony crime, anything like that. Never been in jail, even. We are not concerned about being arrested with pot or crack because we don't carry that stuff. What we're concerned about is being falsely arrested, being set up. What can innocent citizens do to avoid being falsely arrested or having a corrupt cop drop a bag of cocaine, or a TSA officer? They even admit to this. They drop a bag of cocaine in your luggage. What can we do in those cases?
Well, I don't think you can do much about a TSA officer. I mean, if you're going to fly, you're just subject to their control. And that's horrifying as that sounds. But when you're in the open city and you're just traveling around, the key is this, and you're not going to like this, but I've found it to be terribly true.
Okay.
Nothing good happens after about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Nothing. So if you're out on the road and you're traveling around at night, okay, where police have a heightened concern for people and property in the area, you're just subject to encounter law enforcement. And it's just better not to be there. One of my ex-wives once asked me, well, I need to have a gun. And I thought better of that, frankly. And my answer to her was this: you just don't need to be. If you're going somewhere where you think you need a gun, you don't need to be there.
That's a good point too. Yes.
I think probably just staying out of areas where there's a high crime, incident of high crime. And the other thing is looking suspicious. Look, it's really easy when you think about it. If you put on a suit and tie and you drive a Crown Vic that's modestly colored and looks like a law enforcement car, and you're traveling 85 miles an hour, how often do you think you're going to get stopped? You got a suit and a tie on, and you're riding down the road, and it looks like a law enforcement car. You're never going to get stopped, right?
Right.
On the other hand, if you're driving down the road like a Cheech and Chong bomber
in El Camino, 1973,
are you going to get stopped? The answer is absolutely 100% of the time.
Right.
Because that's where the arrests are, right? The guy's got a warrant out for him. The buddies that are in the car are hiding weapons. I can remember stopping a car in Miami, arresting everybody, and finding under the back seat of the car literally hundreds of rounds of ammunition and 4 handguns. So anytime you get to stop, and that was 4 felony arrests, right?
Yeah.
So anytime you're with a bunch of guys in a car, it's like a 6-pack, you know? You can't just drink one.
Doesn't this also... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. So if you're riding around with a bunch of guys in a car that's not properly licensed or tagged, you're going to get stopped. You're going to get questioned. And if you don't have the right answers or if there are warrants, you're going to have a problem. For example, frankly, you're riding in a car, the driver's the only person who should be displaying a driver's license. But how often have my clients been stopped and everybody in the car has got to produce an ID?
And the officer just says, everybody show me your ID?
Of course. But think about it. What would happen if one of the guys said, I'm not showing you anything. I don't have, under my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, I'm not showing you diddle, buddy. Pound salt. What do you think is going to happen to that kid?
He's going to get pulled out and beat.
Well, maybe he won't get beat, but he's going to jail.
I think he's going to get beat, and then he's going to get thrown in jail. and then they're going to start a race war out of it if he's not white. That's what I think.
It's a real problem with law enforcement and selective sorts of enforcement. And it's been going on. Look, we all profile. That's a shorthand for being able to survive in the world. If you're walking down a street and you see somebody hid up in an alley somewhere, it doesn't matter what race the individual is. You're going to shy away from that person hiding up in the alley, right? That's profiling. So it's more situational, I think. So
you're saying I shouldn't ride my Harley with my bandana, my tattoos, my long sideburns. I mean, just to mention a stereotype. And you also talk about body work on your car. If your car looks like it's in bad mechanical condition, that's also another reason to get stopped, huh?
Yeah, of course. We had a favorite thing in Miami. If you're driving down the road and your backup lights are on, that's a violation.
Oh, yeah, right.
So anything that's not right with your automobile, it causes you to get stopped. It causes you to get searched. Remember, the officer's in an elevated stance from you anyways, looking down into your car, right?
That's right.
So if you've got any kind of contraband or any questionable items in your car, you got a problem because that's plain view. And the officer has every right based on that to do what he needs to do or she needs to do.
Let me ask you this. You probably did a lot of traffic stops in your days as a Miami cop, I'm sure.
Oh, I loved them.
You loved them?
Sure. Gets the adrenaline going. You never know when you turn on your lights whether or not the guy's going to flee from you.
And that's
if he rabbits from you, everybody likes a chase, right?
Right. It's better than paperwork, huh?
There's nothing better. Sliding around corners with your headlight and sirens and all that on, man, it's to die for, sure.
But that's a good point. About the psychology of law enforcement is sometimes, I mean, you even describe them sometimes as sharks who are out on the roads looking for prey. Life can be boring as a cop if you're behind a desk a lot. You need a little adrenaline rush. You need a little excitement. We know the DEA loves smashing in doors of marijuana clinics in California. Isn't there an element of just, really fun excitement from time to time?
Of course, that's why we do it. To the uninitiated, you seem surprised at that. Boy, it's a kick.
Yeah,
I'm kind of
surprised.
Of guys, you all get white hats, right? And you rush into the darkness. So, yeah, of course, it's exciting, and you're on the right side of the law. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. At least that's what we're led to believe, of course.
Right.
So there's a dynamic there that absolutely cannot be denied.
So our job as innocent citizens, then, is to not invoke that kind of adrenaline response from the officer who's interacting with us, then.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I'd say that's a fair point, yes.
Because I volunteered with police in Tucson, And I remember in the defensive tactics training there, they always said that resistance is met with force. So if you bring up force, the officer escalates it to more force. If you chill out, they will chill out.
Of course. Of course they will.
All right, we've got a lot more. Stay with us, Dale. I want to have you on the other side of this break. It's a fascinating conversation. Stay with us. A lot more straight ahead here on the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams interviewing Dale Carson. We'll be right back. Riders on the storm. Man, it's a crazy world out there, but to help us make sense of that, we've got attorney Dale Carson joining us in this final segment here on the Alex Jones Show, Tuesday, April 10th. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. Thank you for joining us. And Dale, I've got an interesting question for you. You know, what about, in your book, you talk about how the biggest problem that the day-to-day criminals have is they don't show up for court. Their alarm clock doesn't work. They don't get out of bed and go to court and show up for the hearings and pay the fines and so on. And then it just escalates and gets worse and worse. But what about innocent people like James Stewart, who was a guest in the first hour of this show, where he shows up in court, he goes to court on time, on schedule to face these bogus charges because he was distributing milk in California. He's the milkman. And then he's in court one day in LA County, and then the Ventura County sheriff's people, deputies, arrest him there in the LA court for bogus financial crimes that they dreamed up in Ventura County. And he gets hauled into the system as a completely innocent victim of it. How do you even begin to try to assert your rights in those kinds of situations? Well,
it's an odd thing. In the United States, if you violate a law, you can violate a federal law, a state law, a municipal law, and you could be charged independently by each of those agencies. And what has to happen is anytime you're in trouble with the police, law enforcement, and there's a pending criminal case, you need to be in constant communication with the investigators in the other side of the case, my opposition, the law enforcement people, and also the state attorney's office, and perhaps the U.S. attorney's office, to make certain that there are no more pending charges. The most shocking thing happens when my clients get arrested for, let's say, possession of narcotics case. Simultaneously, DEA on the federal side is working a narcotics case. They bond out on a $500,000 bond. So they put up $500,000 or $100,000 to bond out. $50,000, they would put up 10%. They get out, but before they can actually reach the jailhouse door, the federal government hits them with a charge. And so they're right back in jail, and they're out $50,000, right? You've got to coordinate that with your attorneys and with law enforcement to make sure those kinds of things are not going to happen. Because when they do, as you mentioned, there you are. You've already expended money on an attorney, fines, your bail bond, and now all of a sudden all of that's washed away. And that's just tragic. Well, and in James' case, they slapped him with $1 million in bail. Now, what kinds of things you've seen firsthand, what kinds of things would typically earn $1 million in bail? You know, it's interesting you should mention that. Jacksonville has probably the highest bonds of any place in the country that I know of. So I often see $1 million bonds. I had a case where a guy was an insurance fraud case, minor amounts of money, he'd been charged. His bond was set at $1 million, and it's often punitive. In other words, law enforcement, those are the people who talk to the judges and get the bonds set, because typically you're not represented when you show up. So $1 million bond is not uncommon in certain of our cases. But generally, and this is particularly true in federal court, bonds are never that high in federal court. With rare exceptions, most everyone goes home with basically a surety bond that's not even paid yet in the federal side. So what it tells me is one of your folks gets $1 million bond, somebody's trying to send him a real message. Oh, yeah, they were, and they did, as they tortured him and abused him in the LA County Jail. Look, we're almost out of time, but Dale, I want to thank you for joining us and encourage those who like to learn more from you to check out your website, dalecarsonlaw.com. This is the book, Arrest Proof Yourself, which I have read and found it to be absolutely fascinating as someone who hasn't even been in the jail system. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. Thank you, Dale, for joining us. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Great to have you on. And thank you for watching today. I really appreciate your support here on The Alex Jones Show. I want to thank the InfoWars crew and Alex in particular for leading such an amazingly effective organization fighting for your liberty and justice across America. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.